Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Opinion Machine, the show we talk about all things gaming. My name is Killjoy. Today I'm going to talk about the recently released Wave 3 of the Booster Pass for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on the Switch. It's come out, I think it's about a week at this point by the time I'm recording it, so I want to get my a bit of time with the tracks and then give my thoughts like I have done with the others. And then I think I'm going to do a separate video on the Booster Pass so far, because this is basically halfway now, so we've got another year of content to come, which is cool. So let's talk about it. Let's not waste any time. Let's start off with the Rock Cup. That was the first one that they've added in this new wave, and I think I've actually finally hit this sort of fatigue with the tour tracks. So we start off with London Loop, which I will be honest, I actually quite like. I don't think it's a bad track by any means, but I think my issue is that the tour tracks are taking up a lot of this pass, and I think Nintendo wants them to basically be part of it, and quite frankly, it's too much. We're getting too many tracks per things. I think one tour track would have been fine in this particular case. We've got 3, even though one isn't listed as tour. But London Loop, what is it? It's based on London in the UK, and it has like the London Eye, Big Ben, all these other things. You go around the gardens in London. It's not a bad track. You've got the big red buses as well. There is some weird inconsistencies with these tour tracks, like as we'll get to with Berlin as well, because that actually has cars that move on it. This one doesn't. New York Minute doesn't. But this track is definitely better than the Tokyo one. I think that is by far the worst one in the game. But it's a fun, windy track. It's very long. It's got good music, but it doesn't stand out in any particular way. Honestly, apart from chain chomps that are in the garden and the ones bouncing around on the last lap, it's a fun track, but it's not necessarily memorable. Like, you'll have a good time on it because it's there's a lot of good places to like drift and boost and things, but they're starting to show that they are very samey, these tracks. And I think Sydney Sprint is by far the best one so far. I don't think any of the other tour tracks come close to being as good as that one. But this is at least fun. It's at least fun, I'll give it that, but nothing that's gonna particularly like wow your socks, I don't think, this one. Then next up after that we had Boo Lake from the Game Boy Advance game, and I gotta be honest, this might actually be my favourite track in this entire wave. Now, I didn't play a lot of the Game Boy Advance game, I have played it, and this is very similar to the Ghost Valley levels that were in the original. And it's really cool to see something like this, and this is just a track that I really enjoyed. I don't know if it's because of the really tight turns, or the fact that it's a little bit on the shorter side. It's not doing anything crazy, but this is just a really solid track from start to finish. Like I said, it is a little bit shorter, but you have a few jumps, you've got some crazy turns. The track's half of it's underwater, so you get that. You've got the anti-grav because all the tracks like spiraling out. It's just a really cool track. I've seen some people criticize it for being like maybe rushed, but I don't think the track's rushed at all. I think it actually just suits its purpose. The Game Boy Advance tracks are definitely, shorter by nature. Same with the SNES tracks. But honestly, like, I think the simplicity added with the theming of this level and the cool underwater section and the fact that it's like a Ghost Valley level or style, I think this works really well. I think this is a really, really fun track and probably either the best or second best in the entire pack that we've got. Honestly, I love this track. I think it's really, really good, and this is going to be something that goes into my regular staples. It's just a good track for racing on. It feels like a go-kart track is probably the best way to describe it. Some of these tracks are crazy, but this one feels like an actual go-kart track. So honestly, out of the first 4 tracks, I think this is the best one. Though I think people will disagree in a minute. Then we have Alpine Pass, or which is also known as Rock Mountain in America. In America. This track, I feel, has suffered massively for being on here. So on the 3DS, which is where it comes from, I feel like it worked really well with the 3D, and it was a good level on there. But my god, is this track boring. Like, I didn't realize how, like, simple this track is. Like, they could have done more with, like, the rocks or the mountain pass and stuff. There is some cool elements where you can glide and hit, like, wind to go up and stuff. And it's not like it's an awful track. But this definitely did not fare very well being brought over to Mario Kart 8. I think this is a track that definitely needed a bit more to it, and I feel like a lot of the booster tracks are kind of that. Some are too simple, some are the right amount, like Boo Lake actually feels simple, but the theme works, whereas this just feels like you just drift around a couple corners. You just glide pretty much most of the track, and then drive back up the mountain and do it again. There are better versions of what they're trying to do in this track, as in like DK Mountain from the GameCube. It does a much better job of what they're trying to purvey here. So I actually think this is pretty boring. Actually, this track, unfortunately, I don't dislike it. I don't hate it, but it doesn't do anything interesting, and I think it loses a lot of what was cool about it on the 3DS was, like, you know, the trees and the pipes going by the screen when you had the 3D on, whereas now you don't get any of that. So yeah, I can't really give it a glowing review, this one. It's not the most interesting. But then we move on to Maple Treeway from Mario Kart Wii, and this is a really solid track. This always was a really solid track, and I'm really enjoying the fact that it is back. I like the fact that they actually have, in Mario Kart Wii, you had the ability to go up like these blue strips, and you could like pull off tricks and come back down and get a boost. They actually have that here, which is cool to see. It doesn't do anything new per se. Like, it's still the same Maple Treeway that you know. It feels a bit wider, and I think that's part of my biggest issue with a lot of the Mario Kart 8 booster tracks, is they feel a bit too wide. But I think that's to compensate for the amount of variance in the vehicle parts. But I like it. I think it's just a solid track. You've got, like, you know, you go down the tree and you shoot out the cannon to the top of the tree, and you're driving around it, and then you fly all the way back down, and it's interesting. It's one of the more interesting tracks that is definitely in this set of 8. And I'm for one, I'm really glad to see it. I really hope they bring over the DK. I don't know what it's called. Like, not DK Mountain. Like, there's like a snow skiing one, or whatever it's called, like a snowboarding one. I hope that makes its way over as well. But all in all, I think Maple Treeway is an absolute, like, classic, and I think it's really cool to see it here. I think that and Coconut Mall is really good selection from the Wii game so far. I hope they continue to pick good tracks from there. Out of the 4, I think Boo Lake's my favourite. I'd never played on that before. I think it's a really good remake of that track. I think the weakest one in this is Rock Mountain or Alpine Pass. And then London Loop and Maple Treeway. Like, Maple Treeway is great. London Loop's just okay, but it's not awful. So all in all, you know, it's a decent set of 4 tracks. There's usually always one track in a set of 4 that I don't like. So the first part of that, the Rock Cup, pretty solid, I would say. I had fun with it. The other cup that was added was the Moon Cup. And this starts off with Berlin Byways, which is, again, another city tour track. I don't hate it. I think I prefer London just a bit. Like, there's a cool part with the Berlin Wall and then, like, the womps in it and stuff. And there are elements of this that I like, but I don't know. The track itself just isn't... I don't know. Something about it that I don't necessarily like. I think it has more going for it, because you technically have all the vehicles on the road that are moving. You've got the Berlin Wall with the womps. You've got thwomps on it. You've got, like, you go backwards at one point. I don't know. Like I said, I don't hate it. I think I prefer London just a little bit. I think it might just be because I prefer London's layout of, like, drifting and stuff around the track. But I am very fatigued on these tracks now, and I quite frankly, like, the fact that we're going to get probably, what, 2, 4 more, I think? No. 6 more? Just straight up ones at other cities. It's gonna suck the life out of this thing overall in the end, because not all these tracks don't all need to be here. I'd rather Nintendo focus on bringing back other tracks from the games. I mean, you've obviously got Ninja Hideaway, you've obviously got Sky High Sunday, and we've got Merry Mountain that we'll get to in a minute, which are from Tour, which they don't have Tour tagged on them, but they're clearly designed for that game. And I think that's the biggest problem, is these Tour tracks are designed for Tour, so that's why they feel really simplistic in how wide the tracks are, how the tracks feel, and I think that's the biggest problem that they have. But Berlin, not a bad track. I don't dislike it. I think I prefer London, but I'm just kind of burnt out on those at this point. And I'll be honest, it doesn't get much better with DS Peach Gardens, or Peach Gardens from the DS. This is another track that really has downgraded from the original version it was on. So on DS, a lot of the track felt tighter, whereas in this game, everything feels super wide. This track feels immensely more boring in this version of the game. Yes, on the last lap, you now go backwards, which is a really cool addition, but this is not a track that I would necessarily pull from the DS, like, over some others, like Delfino Plaza. I'm trying to think what else. Airship Fortress from the DS. There are other tracks that I think would be better here. Like I said, I don't dislike this track. I do enjoy it, but I'm just kind of like, everything's just a bit too wide. Everything needs to be narrowed down. Like it's too easy to get past the chain chomps. The corners are very, very wide. And I get it, with more races you need more space, but overall, I kind of don't like this version as much as the old one. I don't think it's awful. I don't think it's bad. It's just a bit boring, and unfortunately, a lot of people were saying this is the best wave, and I just don't see it. Like, we've got some mediocre tracks. We've got some good tracks, to be fair, but we've got some mediocre ones as well. So yeah, Peach Gardens, not an awful track by any means. A bit of a classic from the DS, but this version, I don't think it does it justice as much as the original did. And then we got Merry Mountain, which it's from Mario Kart Tour, but for some reason it isn't listed as Tour. Unfortunately, Merry Mountain is it's like Sky High Sunday. It's just a giant oval, but like it's done up it's not necessarily an oval, but it might as well be. The track itself is beautiful. It looks really cool, but the actual track, it's like the driving on the track, it's this one is a little bit short, like the Boo Lake one, except for Boo Lake just feels, that's the one thing with Boo Lake, is the track feels a lot tighter, so you're dealing with the other races significantly more, whereas there's a lot of wide parts. The end bit's really cool, but I just feel like this track selection's really, I don't know, they picked simpler tracks. I don't know, something about this track selection has not gone down well with me personally, but you know, if you like them, you like them. But the track itself, very fun in terms of the festive theme. I get it why it's on here, but you basically drive around a little bit of the village, you come out of the village, you go up to the top of the ski lift, and then you just fly down the mountain, and that's it. It's not that interesting. Again, very much designed for Tour. It feels like it was designed for Tour, and you can kind of see that and feel it here, which is unfortunate, but you know, I understand it's a seasonal track, and they wanted to include it. So very, very nice to look at. Not the most interesting to drive on. Lastly, that brings us to Rainbow Road from the 3DS. Now, this was actually a really cool, good choice. I really like Rainbow Road as the concept of Rainbow Road in all the games. I'm really glad now that I can do a four-track Rainbow Road Cup if I want to, with this one, the SNES one, the N64, and then Mario Kart 8's Rainbow Road. I really hope we get the GameCube Rainbow Road. That would be cool. I'd like to see 2 more Rainbow Roads added in, but before this the whole thing's up. But 3DS Rainbow Road, this looks fucking amazing. This is a very, very, very beautiful track. They've done an incredible job here. It's not the hardest Rainbow Road, but it is one of the most interesting. It is another point-to-point like the N64 one has become. But there are a ton. You get to go around Saturn, basically. You get to do some amazing like turns. You get glider sections. You've got wobbly parts of the track. You've got tunnels. It's honestly one of the better visually looking tracks in the entire pass. It is one of the better Rainbow Roads, if probably one of the easier Rainbow Roads. I, for one, I'm really glad to see this here. This is a really good addition, and this is why I think this and Boo Lake are my favourites in this entire wave. I think they just nailed it with this track and with Boo Lake, and that might be my bias, is that I like a lot of the older tracks and stuff, like what I'm seeing with the new stuff that we're getting from either Tour, well, pretty much just Tour. And even with Peach Gardens and stuff, like that, some things are being changed up too much, and some are just not that interesting, unfortunately. All in all, I actually do enjoy the wave, despite my negative comments on this. I do enjoy what we've got here, because it's 8 new tracks, which is great, and I can stick those into rotation. I don't hate any of them. I don't think any of them are awful. I would say the weakest track in this entire pack is probably Alpine Pass. It just hasn't translated very well from the 3DS over to the Mario Kart 8. And probably the same with Peach Gardens. I think the Tour tracks are a little bit more interesting than those two, and they happen to be the weakest. But all in all, I am enjoying the wave. I think that we've got some, we're getting nice additions. I am looking forward to the harder tracks being added, because, I mean, I guess Maple Treeway and 3DS Rainbow Road are like the hardest ones here. You could say Boo Lake, because it's a lot tighter, but I want to see stuff added in that's like more difficult. Like, give us like Dino Dino Jungle, give us the Wario Colosseums, the Waluigi Stadiums, the stuff that's like the crazy tracks that are a lot more tough. I don't want to see much more of like Peach Gardens. That's too simple. going forward in these next set of tracks, let's have some more difficult ones. Let's end on the GameCube Rainbow Road, like a track that's genuinely difficult, and I hope that we continue to get more and more difficult tracks as we go on, because I feel like in the first 3 waves we've had simpler stuff, especially wave 1 with the first set. And I would like to see some more complex tracks coming in. And there are tons and tons and tons of great tracks that could still come over from the GameCube. There are some from the N64 that I would actually like to see, as well as the Wii, you know, and 7 and DS. So there's still plenty of stuff to come. Overall, a good set of tracks. You're going to enjoy it. You're going to enjoy playing this at Christmas with your family and stuff like that. But yeah, not perfect. I still think I prefer Wave 2, but Wave 3, right there, full of some fun things. And 3DS Rainbow Road and Game Boy Advance Blue Lake really sold this for me. So there are my thoughts on the Wave 3 of Mario Kart Booster Pass. I'm going to do a video on the whole thing, like I said, talking about where we're at, and look at the track selection, and look at what would be good to see, and all that stuff. That'll be coming up. But thank you very much for watching. As always, if you like the video, you hit like. If you want to subscribe and see more content like this, then hit the subscribe button down below. Links for Facebook and Twitter down there also. And until next video, I will see you then.